Hey, it's Nick Swardson. You're watching Comedy Matters TV with Jeffrey Gurian, and shout out to Sirius XM. What?
Hey, it's Jeffrey Gurian here, backstage at the Fillmore Theater at the South Beach Comedy Festival. And I'm here with Nick Swardson. What's up, Nick? How are you, man?
Hello, how are you?
I'm amazing. Yeah,
Awesome.
your show is very cool, man. You killed it.
Thanks, man. Yeah. What does it mean when the audience boos? Is that bad?
I wouldn't know. I didn't hear anything like that going on. But Billy Idol, man. You open to Billy Idol. That's the best.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be Dancing with Myself, I came out to, and you can't be in a bad mood when you hear that song.
The only one better could have been White Wedding Day, but Dancing with Myself is like, just the fact that you used Billy Idol, I knew right away it was going to be a killer show.
Yeah, it always warms them up. It's better than like, I always, maybe Eyes Without a Face. Never know, might throw that in.
What album was that from, by the way? Do you know? Because they were all together.
Billy Idol's Greatest Hits. I think that was
from the Greatest Hits. Okay, I thought it was maybe like White Wedding Day because I used to play that all the time. It was great.
Okay. Yeah, no, I only know a couple of his songs.
I was expecting either that or maybe hip hop. From Malibu's Most Wanted. You're a hip hop guy?
Yeah, I'm a hip hop fan. Way before Malibu's Most Wanted. That wasn't what turned me on to hip hop.
No. That's why you wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I am a hip hop fan. I mean, I was part of like the golden era when it was like the early '90s and late '80s and stuff, when it was like really on point with Tribe Called Quest and Souls of Mischief and De La Soul and stuff.
You remember AMG? Bitch Better Have My Money?
Yeah, of course.
I was Patrice O'Neal's co-host on the Black Phillip show, and he said I was the only white guy he ever met who knew all the words to "Bitch Better Have My Money." Yeah, it was definitely fun. As a matter of fact, I think we have some mutual friends, and it's always weird when you say that because you don't know. Yeah, like after I'm saying it, I'm thinking, well, I hope you still get along. The guys from Reno 911, Michael Ian Black and Ben Garant. Never heard of them?
We had a bad falling out. Who else do you have that you know?
Barry Katz.
Bad falling out. Yeah, I get along with everybody. I don't really have any comedy beef besides Rita Rudner. You heard me. Yeah, no, I love the Reno guys. I've known them for a long time. I knew them way before Reno. They were friends of mine from New York, from like in the late '90s.
We did a film together. It was the first interactive film that Sony ever did called I'm Your Man. And it was before they did The State and MTV.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before they did The State. It was one of their earliest projects. And it was the first interactive film, like the audience would press buttons and change the film according to what was the majority of what the audience wanted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then they went on to do great shit, and I'm doing this.
Right, which is way better.
I actually saw them recently. Ben came to the Friars Club in New York and did a thing, and Michael Ian Black was at some event, I don't know. But are you in touch with those guys once in a while?
I would say I talked to Carrie Kinney the most. She, I knew her before I knew them, so I talked to her a lot. I just saw Michael recently. We always just kind of run into each other. I mean, people, everyone's just, you get to a point where like all the people that you started with and all the people that you used to know, like get families and they get busy and they start working and they get on shows and traveling. You never really talk to people anymore, so it's kind of bizarre. Like you lose touch, not in a bad way. It's just your lives just kind of grow. You know what I mean?
Things get busy.
But you do miss those days of starting out, and when everybody used to hang out. You go to the comic strip, and you just see everybody. It's just so funny. I mean, I remember guys like Zach Galifianakis and Judah Friedlander. He would do spots at 2 a.m. at the comic strip, and we would drive down to the cellar like in a shitty van, and you just like those old days. It's just kind of fun to look back. And
so you were originally from New York. If you used to do the strip, you're from a New York guy?
I'm from Vietnam.
Yeah.
I was born in a rice field, and that's where I went to high school and college.
And that's what the Asian look is about?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm from Minnesota. I moved from Minnesota to New York.
And when did you first move to LA?
I started comedy in '95. I moved to New York in '98. I moved to LA in 2000. And
in your early days, were you with Barry Katz?
I was with Dave Becky, then I was with Barry Katz and Vincent Nastri, and then I was with Bernie Brillstein and Tim Sarkis, who is my manager now. They're both with Brillstein Gray.
I know Tim a long time. That's great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. Absolutely. What is it? It sounds like a railroad. Something.
Hip hop earthquake. Jesus, a lot of bass.
So I think Barry told me an interesting story about you that you wrote the original script to Malibu's Most Wanted and maybe sent it to Jamie Kennedy or something like that.
Yeah,
and
was it to him? He goes, "Hey man, Swardson came into my office. This is how much he respects comedy. On a notebook, he sat there and he wrote it and faxed it to Jamie Kennedy. And if you want to do comedy, that's the kind of commitment that you need to do." Scene.
That is the best fucking Barry Katz that I have ever heard. Not that I've heard a lot of people try to do Barry Katz, but that is amazing. That is amazing. And that was the story that he told me up in Montreal.
Yeah.
We were talking about shit. I don't know about the history of comedy, and then he happened to tell me the Nick Swardson story. I'm like, it's a great
history of comedy, and somehow my Malibu's Most Wanted script. We covered Chaplin, we covered Woody Allen, and Malibu's Most Wanted, of course, Steve Martin.
And Nick Swardson, how he got his start. That's always fascinating how people break in. You know, it's luck followed by talent. You know, being in the right place at the right time, contacting.
It's everything. It's a melting pot of everything. People always. The most annoying question is when people are like, "How do you get started? Like, how do you do this?"
Yeah,
it's like, I don't fucking know.
As if there's some rule.
Yeah.
Some path to follow.
Yeah, there's no like blueprint. I mean, like Chris Rock said that he goes, if somebody asks you how to get into comedy, they don't want to get into comedy. They don't really want to. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't ask anybody. I just like, oh, there's an open mic in town. I'm gonna write a couple minutes, and I went and just did it. You know what I mean? I wasn't like running around going, how do I do this? How do you do that? What do I do? How do I get into it? Like, and people like come up to me and be like, how do I get into a movie? I'm like, I don't fucking what?
Like I would know, yeah, right.
Yeah,
just do shit. Like you get up and you do shit, and
there's no guarantee, and hopefully it works out.
Well, it's the hardest thing in the world, like to get up on stage and try to convince strangers that what you think is funny is funny.
Yeah.
And then it just works. You keep doing it, and then there's like no rules and shit. You just it's crazy business.
Comics, you always hear stories of guys who like bombed for like 6 years and then like it finally clicked. You know, I mean that's like really, I mean that's tenacity. You know, to be able to like persevere through. I mean, I was always pretty accessible and my material was always relatable. Like so, I always did well. I was able to survive on stage with like for guys that would just eat shit. And they were funny. You know, I mean, comics were really funny, but they just didn't have a good persona or they had bad delivery but. I always thought that was pretty cool.
Jim Gaffigan told me he battled stage fright for 6 years, so bad that he would get sick before he'd go on. And he said, and his only credit was that Dave Attell once told him he was funny. And that was it. And that's what kept him going. So I said, was Dave Attell a fan of yours? He goes, well, I wouldn't go that far. Because if you know Attell, you couldn't exactly call him a fan. But he did tell me that I was funny, and that kept him going, because he said it was torture for 6 years.
Wow. I mean, I remember Gaffigan back in those days. And I mean, he used to do Gladys's, Gladys.
Sure, I know Gladys very well. She still does the open mic show at the comic strip.
Oh, really?
That's my home club. I did the book on the strip with Chris Rock wrote the introduction to it.
Oh, that's great, man. That's awesome.
It took me 4 years, man. I interviewed Seinfeld, Billy Crystal, all the guys that started there, Paul Reiser, all of them that had great stories about the strip. That's why I was wondering, if you had done your early days at the strip.
That was the first club that I worked in New York. I moved there when I was 21, and I had a friend who was managed by Lucian.
Lucian Hold, yeah.
Yeah, and so he introduced me to Lucian. And
so many people thought he owned the club because he managed it for like 25 years. When Richie Tinkin spent a lot of time in L.A. with Eddie because he was handling Eddie. Was he in the New York club when you were there in those days, Richie Tinkin?
Richie was not. No, I think I saw him a couple times. Yeah. But I didn't really know him. When I was there, Lucian was like, he was always there. And so, everybody always heard these stories about Lucian. So my friend was like, hey, this is Nick. He's a young comic. He's really funny. Like, if you ever get a chance to see him. And he's like, well, he's going to have to do the late night. Sign up and we'll see. And so
he spoke like he was from a novel in the 17th century, like he should be wearing a cape and have one of those long curved pipes.
Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah. So I was one Friday night, and I'm hanging out because my buddy was like, hang out there a lot, just get to know people and just have them see you. So I'm hanging out, and he just comes up to me and he's like, we have a 8:40 if you want to do it. Somebody canceled. And I was like, are you serious? And so I did it. I just killed. I just ripped it. It was like my first big set in New York. Fucking crushed on a Friday. I was so excited. And I was like kind of shaking, and I come off stage and I walk up to him and I'm like, I go, that was so incredible. I go, the crowd was amazing. It was one of the best moments of my life. I go, thank you so much. And he just goes, wow, man. And just walked away. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And I grabbed my buddy and he's like, it's just Lucian. He's like, it's a long story. Like, you'll just trust me. You're fine.
That's a perfect Lucian story. I must have interviewed 50 people for the book, and everybody had a Lucian story.
Yeah.
Because he was just. I'm surprised he didn't say to you, "I have enough white comics," because that was
one that he said a lot. But I was different because I was like I was really young, and so I had a different energy. But yeah, I guess like a lot of those guys were like super pissed.
He even said that to the black comics. He was like, it was amazing. So he passed you on your first time?
Yeah, so I started working there, and I became friends with him, and it was great. I was really sad when he passed. It was just to change the club entirely. It was
devastating. Yeah, scleroderma, man. It was a hard way to go.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah, he was losing fingertips, and he was in so much pain, and it was horrible.
It's terrible.
But he was actually the face of the club for 25 years. When Richie went to L.A. to handle Eddie, he taught Lucian. You know, Lucian started out as a bartender. He was a carpenter first, who actually helped build the club, physically built the club, and he was a Broadway dancer. And then when he finished building it, Richie said, well, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to try to find a job on Broadway. He goes, why don't you stay and be a bartender? He says, I don't know how to be a bartender. He says, well, if someone asks you for a beer, you give them a beer. Now you're a fucking bartender. And he wound up taking over he ran the club for 25 years.
That's awesome.
So, legendary dude.
Worked with Sandler for the last 10 years. And that was when I first met Adam. He saw my Comedy Central special and wanted to meet me. And we were shooting the shit. Like, one of the first things we bonded over was Lucian. Because he was like, you came from New York or whatever? And I was like, yeah, we were talking about Lucian, and he had a bunch of great stories. And so it was like, that was our first, like, bonding thing. Yes, wow, man.
That's a great Lucian. You do so many impressions. How come you don't do them in your act?
I don't know.
You could.
I know.
You definitely could.
I don't know if the crowd in South Beach should get my Lucian Hold impression, but might go over. We'll see.
Gilbert used to do Seinfeld impressions before anybody knew who Seinfeld was. And people were like, why are you doing Jerry Seinfeld?
Really?
No one knows who he is. Yeah, because Gilbert does everybody. He does impressions of every comedian. But he was enthralled with Jerry Seinfeld before he became famous, you know? So, and people were like, what the fuck is it? Why Jerry Seinfeld? You know, why do you pick him?
That's funny.
Gilbert is a trip.
Yeah.
So, you wound up doing a movie with Adam, right? With Adam Sandler. Didn't you write a few of them? 10 movies with Adam Sandler?
I've done a bunch of movies with Adam.
Which ones?
I did Click, and I'll pronounce Chuck and Larry, Zohan, Just Go With It.
Really, Zohan.
We were with Bucky Larson together. Grown Ups 2.
You starred in Bucky Larson, and you wrote and directed it, didn't you?
I didn't direct it, no. I wrote it. I wrote Malibu's, I wrote Bucky Larson, I wrote Grandma's Boy. Benchwarmers. I was a writer on, I now pronounce Chuck and Larry. A handful of stuff. On-set producer on a bunch of the movies.
But you didn't have to fax the other scripts in, right? Only the
technology caught up, and I was okay.
Faxing 110 pages, that's dedication.
Yeah.
Totally dedication. So what are you working on now? Like, what's the big thing that we should know that Nick Swardson is doing?
I'm developing a new TV show. I had my sketch show on Comedy Central, and now I want to do a half-hour scripted, so we're talking to a couple spots, but Comedy Central mainly, and doing a new hour special. I'm gearing up for that. I'm doing probably a 35-city tour in the fall. Should be pretty intense. And then just developing some more screenplays. I got 3 movies I'm going out with to hopefully set up. They range from, like, one's a big budget Hollywood studio movie, and one's an independent movie that's really crazy. And so just, still writing and producing and all that jazz.
When do you decide what part you want for yourself when you're writing the script?
Well, that's why, like, I do a lot of that stuff is, like, I always create a show every year, and it's just, like, I like writing for myself, and I don't really like reading, It's rare that I've done a couple movies outside of stuff I've written, but I like creating stuff for myself.
Oh, it's the best. And then do you get a chance to direct your own stuff now?
I don't. I work with one of my best friends is a director. He directed this movie Grandma's Boy that I did. and he's really, really great. I've done a ton of stuff with him, so I kind of defer to him because he really has a good aesthetic and a really good eye. I mean, he is in the Directors Guild, and the 2 people that signed his DGA papers were Paul Thomas Anderson and David Fincher.
And what's his name?
His name is Nicholas Goosen.
It's great, man. It's good to have a team, somebody you can really trust.
Yeah, I mean, especially directing. And, because a lot of comedies, like, the direction is not a real aesthetic or a real, like, that's usually the last thing people focus on. But if you have somebody that can make a film, like, look good, and, it's important.
Yeah. I just wanted to say this about your show tonight. I really dug the thing about old people playing their music someday, because they're going to be pierced and tattooed, and they're going to be old, and they're going to be playing like crazy shit, like rap music, like elderly people at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that was an old.
About that a lot.
That was an old bit. I'll dust it off for, like, big crowds and stuff. Yeah, but yeah, that was one of my first bits. Was that that kind of phenomenon that will happen.
I think about that a lot. It's very insightful. But as long as Mick Jagger is still happening, nobody will ever be old.
God, I don't think he has no plans of going anywhere. It seems like.
And he moves like he's 25, man. The Stones still, for me, the Stones still rock. They're just amazing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it was great seeing you, man.
Yeah, man.
It was awesome.
Sure.
Thank you so much,
Cheers,
man.
brother.